March 1944, Sighet, northern Romania. The Nazi army entered the city, and under its black boots the dreams of thousands were crushed. Among them was young Elie Wiesel and his family, torn from their home. First they were forced into a ghetto, and then deported in sealed rail cars to Auschwitz, where his family was tortured and enslaved. After liberation in 1945, Wiesel was left alone, scarred by horror, with the memory of his loved ones and of millions of victims engraved forever in his conscience. Against all odds, that pain became a driving force. The young survivor decided to tell what he had lived through in a book that would become a pillar of Holocaust memory. From the gas chambers to the Nobel Prize, this is the extraordinary story of Elie Wiesel, the man who spoke for those who no longer have a voice. Elie Wiesel was born in 1928 in Sighet, a Romanian town where life seemed calm, even for Jews. His parents were Sarah Fai and Shlomo Wiesel, both deeply rooted in Hebrew culture, and they instilled profound respect for it in their children. At home, Yiddish was spoken most of the time, along with German, Hungarian, and Romanian. Wiesel's father, Shlomo, gave his son a strong sense of humanism. He urged him to learn Hebrew and read literature, while his mother encouraged him to study the Torah. Wiesel would later say that his father represented reason, while his mother, Sarah, embodied faith. In that balance, Elie and his three sisters lived a pleasant childhood. But soon, in that community near Romania's Carpathian Mountains, news began to arrive of an evil spreading from Germany, an evil that promised to destroy Europe's hopes for peace.
In 1933, 4-year-old Elie Wiesel lived in his hometown of Sighet, Romania. 700 miles away, Adolf Hitler became the leader of Germany. Over the next several years, as Elie was growing up, Hitler's Nazi government passed laws targeting Jews. Jewish people living in Germany lost their citizenship. They often had to give up their jobs and property. Many tried to emigrate, but emigration was difficult. But these laws didn't affect Elie and his family yet.
Adolf Hitler's rise in German politics in the 1930s shifted the atmosphere across the region. Little by little, rumors spread of a renewed patriotic fervor in Germany, and with it, a fierce rejection of Jewish communities, Roma, Slavs, and other groups deemed problematic. Hatred advanced gradually. It intensified step by step until it reached a point of no return. But while Nazism began to dominate Germany, in cities like Sighet, that fear still felt distant. Romania was not in the Führer's immediate plans, so Elie and his family lived through relatively quiet years, until World War II finally knocked on their door.
When Elie was 11, in 1940, the territory surrounding his hometown of Sighet, Romania was taken over by Hungary. Hungary started deporting foreign Jews, people who had not been born in Hungary or Romania. Elie's mentor, a man with the nickname Moishe the Beetle, was deported along with thousands of other foreign Jews in the summer of 1941. The Nazis murdered almost all of them in mass shootings. But Moishe the Beetle somehow escaped and returned to Sighet. He tried to warn people of the Nazis' plans, but many people didn't believe him.
Moishe's words described a hell on earth, one that many people simply refused to accept as true. He had seen with his own eyes how the German state legalized the destruction of the communities it considered problematic. It was a hunt backed by laws and carried out by police and military forces. But the danger was not confined to Germany. Moishe also witnessed the Third Reich's imperial ambition. It was only a matter of time before the Führer tried to plant his flag in other nations, taking his racial hatred and extreme methods to every corner of Europe. Few listened to Moishe's warnings, but among those who did was Elie's family, even though there was little left to do but wait and watch events unfold. Under Hungarian domination, Romania's Jews were still able to maintain an appearance of normal life. But they could no longer ignore the rumors. Anti-Jewish laws were becoming increasingly brutal in Germany and in other countries. The break came in 1944 when the strategic alliance between Hungary and Germany began to fracture.
In March 1944, the leaders of Hungary secretly began to negotiate to break the country's pact with Germany and surrender. When Hitler learned about this, he ordered German forces to invade Hungary. German troops arrived in Sighet in April 1944. The Holocaust unfolded in Sighet as it had in many other cities throughout Europe, but much faster. The Germans and their Hungarian collaborators arrested Jewish leaders and forced the Jews of Sighet to wear yellow stars, like the ones that other European Jews had been forced to wear.
In March 1944, Germany occupied Hungary, and the Holocaust expanded into northern Transylvania as well. Wiesel was 15 years old. He and his family, along with the rest of Sighet's Jewish population, were confined in one of the two ghettos established in the town where he had been born and raised. In May 1944, Hungarian authorities, under German pressure, began deporting the Jewish community to Auschwitz, where up to 90% of the people were murdered upon arrival. Inside the Sighet ghetto, the Wiesel family learned what hunger truly meant, along with the constant cruelty that German soldiers inflicted on their Jewish prisoners. Resources were scarce, and the Germans had no intention of helping their victims survive. There was little food, no real hygiene, and little by little disease spread, taking the lives of hundreds. In that moment of total desperation, young Elie encountered the kindness of a stranger, someone who tried to help him and his family survive.
We could have them too. We were in the ghetto first for 2 months, and we had a marvelous maid, a Christian woman, marvelous woman called Maria. She lived in a village. And she came into the ghetto and she pleaded with us, "Come with me. I have a hut in the mountains. Come, we have enough, all of you, the entire family." Had we known about Auschwitz, we would have gone with us, but we didn't know.
The Wiesel family had no idea of the extermination plan being carried out by the Third Reich. To them, detention in the ghetto was the harshest punishment imaginable, surely the end of their ordeal. They could not conceive that there was yet another circle of hell ahead, one that almost no one escaped alive. The first to be sent to Auschwitz for supposed forced labor were his mother and his sisters. Soon the truth became clear. In that camp in Poland, there was no work waiting, only gas chambers ready to annihilate thousands.
No, my mother, 3 sisters, 2 older ones and 1 younger one. And my mother and the younger one and my grandmother were taken that night, the very first night.
Never saw them again.
No, we know they gassed that night.
First night.
Very first night.
In time, Elie reflected on that dark stage of World War II, when the Third Reich began to falter on both fronts. Facing imminent defeat, the Nazi government accelerated the extermination process. It shifted focus away from forced labor exploitation and dedicated more personnel and resources to mass murder. During those bloody months of 1944 and 1945, Elie believed that a series of strategic Allied attacks could have saved tens of thousands of people, including his mother and his sisters.
The Hungarian Jewish community could have been saved, because we were deported, as I write it here. March 19, the Germans came in. We were deported May 17, 2 weeks or 3 weeks before D-Day. If the Allies really had bombed the railways to Auschwitz, thousands and thousands of Jews would have been saved. At that time, the Germans were burning 10,000 men, women, and children every day, every night. That hurts.
Elie remained in the ghetto with his father, but not for long. After a few days, they too boarded the trains carrying prisoners to Auschwitz. The journey was long and brutal. There was no food, and at night the cold was deadly. It was common for many passengers to die before reaching their destination. In a bitter twist, those who perished before entering Auschwitz met an end less cruel than those who arrived alive at the extermination camp. Elie Wiesel and his father were assigned to one of the last work details because they were still relatively healthy.
The Nazi camp staff sent Elie and his father to the Buna camp, part of the larger Auschwitz complex. There, prisoners were forced to work to benefit German companies and the German war effort. The work was exhausting. Those who were too weak to work were often sent to the gas chambers to be killed. People who refused or rebelled were killed publicly as a warning to other prisoners.
When they arrived at Auschwitz, they truly saw, the scale of Nazi cruelty for the first time. Even if they suspected that the Third Reich was killing Jews, they could not grasp the industrial system designed to slaughter tens of thousands of people a day. What Nazi Germany had set in motion was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It was the prisoners who received Elie and his father who finally revealed the truth of what was happening inside that infamous camp.
We found out soon after, of course.
You found out?
Yes, because that very night, the inmates who were in charge of receiving us and breaking us in, so to speak, they told us, you see, the flames, the cemetery of an entire people was in those flames.
Elie and his father, Shlomo, spent several weeks in the labor camp. At first, they managed to stay together, and that bond helped them endure daily torment and the grief of losing the rest of their family. They were allowed to work only as long as they remained physically able. After that, they would be sent to the gas chambers. Initially, they were assigned to the Buna synthetic rubber plant at Auschwitz III. But before long, their captors' plans changed. Later, Wiesel and his father were deported to the Buchenwald concentration camp, and by then they had lost almost all hope of ever leaving that hell alive. The only thing that kept them standing was their relationship. During captivity, father and son grew closer and closer, closer even than they had been before World War II.
Inside Auschwitz, we became so close because we had no one else. I was all he had, and he was all I had. And one of the reasons I'm sure why I lived is because I was afraid that if I died, he would die. Same thing for him. He wanted to live because of me.
In later interviews, Elie explained that before the Nazis, he and his father had an affectionate but somewhat distant relationship. Shlomo worked constantly and was not at home very often. Elie, for his part, studied intensely, so he also spent little time with his father. Fate made it so that their deepest closeness came during one of the darkest moments in human history. In that connection, they managed to stay alive, though with almost no hope. During his time in Buchenwald, Elie lived through one of the most horrific moments of his life. His father, exhausted and ill, was brutally beaten by guards after failing to perform his tasks satisfactorily. Elie, young, starving, and powerless, could not defend him. He could only watch as they struck him until he lost consciousness. In the end, Shlomo Wiesel died at the hands of the guards. Now the young Romanian was completely alone in the world. What Elie did not know was that outside the camp, Allied troops were advancing at an unstoppable pace. The Germans were retreating, certain that defeat was only a matter of time. On April 11, 1945, Buchenwald was captured and liberated by the United States Army. American soldiers were horrified by the sadism they discovered there, and they tried to treat and save the wounded and abused survivors. Among them was Elie Wiesel, only 16 years old. After the war ended and Wiesel was liberated, He joined a transport of 1,000 child survivors from Buchenwald to Écouis, France, where a rehabilitation center had been established. From there, Wiesel joined a smaller group of 90 to 100 children from Orthodox homes who wanted kosher facilities and a stricter level of religious observance.
It was a challenge, of course. I didn't know a word of French. Now all my books are written in French. Furthermore, it was something new. For the first time, we were in touch with women who were educators and so forth. And immediately, first of all, I became very religious, extremely religious, just as before. But in the meantime...
But you must have had very different questions.
I had
now.
terrible questions, of course. But
what kind of God and how do you find...
What humanity, what kind of humanity is this?
Later, Wiesel traveled to Paris. There, he learned French and studied literature, philosophy, and psychology at the Sorbonne. He listened to lectures by the philosopher Martin Buber and the existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre. And he spent his afternoons reading Fyodor Dostoevsky, Franz Kafka, and Thomas Mann. Yet beyond all the education he was receiving, one question would not leave him in peace. What was the value of all that culture if he still lived on a continent scarred by brutality and death?
About culture, of course. What about culture?
Yeah.
The killers were cultured persons, educated persons. Some of them had PhDs. When I discovered, the Einsatzkommandos who were the worst because they did Babi Yar and Pinsk, they killed with machine guns, not even with gas. Some of them had doctoral degrees in arts, in medicine, in theology. I couldn't believe it. But they did it. So what is culture? Why be educated?
To ease the pain of what he had lived through, Elie turned to writing. At 19, he began working as a journalist, writing in French, while also teaching Hebrew and serving as a choir director. He wrote for Israeli and French newspapers, including Sien and Kampf, a well-known outlet that closely covered the birth of the State of Israel and the Nuremberg trials.
I became a journalist, first in Yiddish, and then I was sent by a French paper to Israel in '49 to cover the immigration from the DP camps. And I went there for a few months and came back to Paris, remained a foreign correspondent in Paris for that poor paper, which became rich when I left it. And then they sent me to New York for a year.
For 10 years after the war, Wiesel refused to write or speak about his experiences during the Holocaust. But he reconsidered after meeting the French author François Mauriac, the 1952 Nobel Prize in Literature laureate, who eventually became a close friend. Mauriac was a devout Christian who fought in the French resistance during the war, and he became the driving force behind the Romanian survivors' literary path.
I said, Mr. Mauriac, 10 years ago, I knew Jewish children who suffered more than Jesus suffered on the cross, and we don't talk about it. And I got up and I left. I was at the elevator, he came after me. He pulled me back into the same room. He sat down, made me sit down, and he began to weep. I felt hell. I deserved hell, and I was in hell. Because he was a good man, among the very few who never collaborated, who was a courageous man and a generous man.
Mauriac was visibly shaken by Wiesel's words. But instead of simply pitying him, he urged him to become the voice of those who could never denounce their suffering.
And then, without saying a word, we haven't spoken, he took me to the elevator, embraced me, and he said, maybe you should speak about it.
But how do you translate horror into literature? Wiesel first wrote a 900-page memoir in Yiddish, but it proved too ambitious. In the end, he rewrote an abbreviated version of the manuscript. Titled Night, it was published in 1955. The book sold few copies at first, yet it drew the attention of critics, and that led to television interviews with Wiesel. As his public profile grew, Night was eventually translated into 30 languages. It went on to sell millions of copies worldwide, including millions in the United States. At one point, film director Orson Welles wanted to turn it into a feature film, but Wiesel refused. He believed his memoir would lose its meaning if it were told without the silences between his words. In the United States, he wrote more than 40 books, most of them literary works and non-fiction. As an author, he received numerous awards and is regarded as one of the most important voices to describe the Holocaust from an intimate, personal perspective. In 1986, Wiesel received the Nobel Peace Prize for denouncing violence, repression, and racism. The Norwegian Nobel Committee described him as one of the most important leaders in an era still marked by violence, repression, and racism. In his acceptance speech, the survivor said he was grateful that his life could be of interest and value to all humanity.
Thank you, people of Norway, for declaring on this singular occasion that our survival has meaning for mankind.
Elie Wiesel's journey stands as a living testament. From the extermination camps to the Nobel, his life defies the logic of horror through the power of words and an unwavering ethical commitment. He was a survivor who embraced memory so the world would not silence the truth of the Holocaust. This brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoy content focused on the darkest moments of modern history, we invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications for our channel. That way you'll stay up to date with every new release. And with that, we say goodbye until the next installment of Military History. We'll be waiting for you.